That man over there says that women need to be helped into carriages and lifted over ditches and have the best place everywhere. Nobody ever helps me into carriages or over mud puddles or gives me any best place. And ain't I a woman? Look at me. Look at my arm. I have plowed and planted and gathered into bonds, and no man could head me. And ain't I a woman? I could work as much and eat as much as a man when I could get it, and bear the lash as well. And ain't I a woman? I have borne 13 children and seen most all sold off to slavery. And when I cried out with my mother's grief, none but Jesus heard me. And ain't I a woman?
Well, the kind of art that I make is intangibles. I bring intangible spaces into a tangible space for those who have shared experiences within Blackness. And I feel that it's necessary to give people, especially Black people, multiple forms of escapism and room to fantasize and live in that fantasy.
I make, kind of artwork I make is personal, narrative based. It's autobiographical. It includes myself and close people around me, people who inspire me, people who are loved ones of mine, and they're typically in oil painting form.
The art I make is a storytelling art, and it's based on my experience. It's not so much on issues or topics, but if the issue affects my life, then it comes out in my work, and so I tell stories.
Well, I personally feel like my art is multidisciplinary. I like to use elements of fine art and design as a combination to really just integrate the two and create different sculpture work and really highlighting Black women as like the main center and focus of my work. Finding and using braiding hair as a main material, which is like I kind of push the boundaries of to just use it more than just a hairstyle, but also like sculpture working and creating different ways to kind of play with the hair and not traditionally. Yeah.
I would describe my artwork as a diary. A lot of it is used to cathartically work out anything that I'm going through personally, any of the relationships that are very close to me, and just the trauma that I've dealt with in the past and the trauma that I'm dealing with in the present.
I would describe it as art that brings joy and art that heals and art that really affirms who Black girls and who Black women are.
Cryptic.
I make poetry, creative nonfiction, and performance art.
I started calling myself an interdisciplinary artist because I work with media that is digital now. I was trained to work in 16 millimeter film, transitioned to video.
The art I make, I really consider it to be inspirational art because all of my art comes with a message or illustration as to how to live my life.
I make fabric portraits, so raw edge applique quilting with figurative images.
I would mostly say it's abstract, but with an Afrocentric balance.
I work with these materials because they resonate with me. I've always used them. I used to get my hair done growing up, and my guardians always made sure that my hair was always attended to. And I feel that these materials, their job is to essentially protect the Black body, but I see them not only as them physically doing that, but also being the embodiment of protection.
I'm a collage assemblage artist right now, and I think it was a culture that I grew up in. Money was tight in my family, and so my dad would have to fix things with unconventional methods or objects, and so he would put things together. So I saw that, but then one weekend I was with Tauren Wells, another fellow artist who was doing some collages at this workshop, and I didn't have anything to do when I was with her, so I started doing collages, and from that point on, I started doing collages, and it branches out into mixed media and assemblages, and so that's how I got started professionally. But I grew up in a culture of using found objects, recycled objects.
Well, I do, work in various mediums, but I'm more known for my, collages. I just had an interest in it. I saw this artist, Beverly Nunes Ramsey, doing stuff with paper. I was always admired Romar Bearden. And then plus two, I have an interest in turning one thing into other, and part of that is due to my interest in human beings, because I'd be thinking, what are the possibilities? Things don't always look like what you always think they should be.
The effect of the pandemic really had me in the house a lot. It causes women to really feel like not pretty, and so a lot of women hit me up. I do hair, so braid hair, and so a lot of women asked me to braid their hair, which like a lot of time was like my relief from school. Those were the times I would actually meet people, because during the pandemic I was seeing the same two people every day, and so like meeting the new women, we would kind of catch this bonding and this unity of energy that would kind of help. It was kind of forming like a ritual for me, like that like that energy that helped, made me feel happy to create. So like not only was I creating these hairstyles for these women, but they were also feeling beautiful. Like I was transforming them into this sad person to this happy, beautiful queen. So that was kind of like the gist of how I kind of started working with braided hair. And it took for my roommate, Akira, shout out to you, to like really tell me like, Julia, do what you know. Because I was not really sure how I was going to create things, and braiding hair kind of started molding all of that. I just decided to pick it up as a material.
I mainly like to draw, so paper is always like the first material that I go to. I would draw on anything I could find when I was younger. I used to always do origami in like elementary school and middle school. So I also still have that excitement about collecting different textured paper and colored paper and stuff too. And now that I focus mostly on making paper dolls, and that my dolls are also getting larger and I'm using different material, that kind of is influenced on what I choose to work with. So now I work with wood with the larger dolls as well.
There's something very cathartic about peeling away the layers when I'm like carving into linoleum, or there's something about like drawing into the paper where I have a lot of control, and then it allows me to kind of move freely on the surface. So the materials that I use actually help me kind of feel my feelings, if you will.
Well, I use a lot of found materials and things that can be new cycled into something else, and I started that because of lack of funds to afford the materials that I actually wanted to use. So, I mean, trash is available. So I use a lot of plastic bags because that's free, and then it just developed from there.
Well, I've been writing since I was 2 years old. That's a lie, 2nd grade. I've been writing since 2nd grade. I read my first poem in 2nd grade, and it was really the word vivid was in the actual poem, and the imagery in the poem was also very vivid. And I remember having this like visceral reaction and thinking like, this is one of the most beautiful things I ever saw, and that I must also try to do this thing. The same year, my teacher introduced us, of course, during Black History Month, to Black authors, and I chose Langston Hughes and read Mother to Son by Langston Hughes. And I remember that was the first time that I really realized that Black people were smart and creative, and that I really could pursue this as well.
It's a long story. I worked in radio first, and so felt like in radio I was telling stories. I went back to college to feel as if I needed a degree to continue in radio, because it was a very male-centric market. And then I fell in love with image making, moving images, and I felt like, oh, I'm telling stories with images. You know, I'm doing the same thing I did with sound. And at first, when I went to film school, I would create in sound first and then look for images. I wasn't as strong an image maker, but over time, studying film and looking at film became more of a stronger image maker. And that led me to, teaching film and video, working in it, but also now going back to photography, which I think was always kind of an interest of mine anyway.
In 2004, my mother passed away, and I inherited a lot of things. She was a self-taught seamstress. She made dolls, she made quilts, she was a self-taught seamstress, and she left me a lot of rickrack, beads, buttons, wood, sewing machines, thread, you name it. She gave me left me enough material to fill a store. And so that's when I started using those materials, because I didn't want to dispose of them. And plus, that was real hurtful to me for my mother to pass away. And making the art was therapeutic for me, and I wanted to pay homage to my mother. So my mother was a quilter too, so I made a eternal bouquet of flowers for her out of her quilt pieces. And so that's what started. That was the first piece I made after I inherited those things from my mother. And as I've gotten more into my art, I pick up things off the ground, found objects, broken necklaces, earrings, because the piece that I made, my mother, the bouquet that I made, it was, the shelf was out of a broken necklace. So I used jewelry, feathers, beads, buttons, leather, all sorts of fabrics, silks, found objects, screws, shells, and of course, paper products too.
Well, as I've often said, my frame of reference is the Bible. And at a low point in my life, suicidal, I really didn't feel worthy of anything from God. So I read the scripture where it says that the lady said to Jesus, even the little dog eats the scraps from the master's table. So feeling insignificant and small, not worthy of anything, I pleaded to God, well, just give me anything, just help me, give me some scraps. And that turned out to be literally everything that I make. It's from scraps. But before, what it represented, Jehovah told me that I was like a puzzle of a million pieces, and that he would put me together. So that's how I started to take and put in really first fabrics of wearable things. And so it just elevated, and it continued to get more and more, to eventually it came into the things that you see now, the quilts or textile. It came to that point, but still at this point I still use scraps.
I started using fabric because it was the cheapest art supply I could get my hands on. I could get it at a thrift shop. I inherited my grandmother's fabric. It was easy to get and easy to use.
I didn't realize until later, and it was done as a process of grief. I was grieving over the loss of my stepfather, and he was an artist, and he was in Chicago, an artist. He did more commercial art, and when he passed away suddenly, I found myself trying to attach to him kind of by doing art. And I remember my first drawing I did, and I was like, what? And my husband was like, did you know you could do that? I was like, no. But it started off as a grieving, a way for me to grieve, and the process of getting over his sudden death.
Again, I grew up in a house that was creative, so it was not uncommon for us to do creative things. So it was just so natural for me just to glide into it, into art. And I didn't realize that I was a professional, and I still struggle with that term for myself until I went to MyEd, and I had gone to Alverno College, and it was like a glorified high school for art education. But then when I went to MyEd and everybody was so intense, then the passion started growing more and more in me.
I think it started senior year of high school. I was finding myself staying up all night finishing my art projects. That was the only time I was like pull all nighters for my artwork, was literally only for my art class, nothing else. I'll fail it, oh well, but art class, I'll stay up all night doing it. And that's when I realized, like, I definitely love art.
I'm very young. I always loved drawing. I would draw on my homework in like kindergarten and then get in trouble. In second grade, I remember we had a water pollution contest in the school, and I won first place because I did this poster with this guy that was fishing, and he caught an old boat or an old boot or an old tin can or something, and it just said, "I hate dirty water." And people loved it, and it inspired me to want to be an artist. That's all I used to say when I was a kid. I want to be an artist. I went to school for graphic design, and even though I don't really like graphic design now, it influences a lot of my style now. I use a lot of bold lines and color and composition in my work. So,
I've been making art, I feel like, since I was little. I would always draw as sort of like a coping mechanism growing up. Whenever I'd get sent to my room, I would just draw until I fell asleep, pretty much. But I've always known that I wanted to be an artist. Not all the time. I did have some times in high school where I thought that I didn't want to be anymore. But it just felt very natural, the path. I felt very happy making artwork. And it was something that was just naturally came easily to me. So yeah, it was a very intuitive process of like knowing that that's the path that I wanted to take as an adult.
So I was thinking about this question, and I remember when my mom was teaching me how to spell my name, and she had this chalkboard, and she had orange and pink chalk, and I just really liked the way that looked, and I liked to color, and learning how to make M for my name, and then I later used the M to make the chest on people when I started drawing bodies. And then my dad taught me how to put puzzles together, so I really enjoyed patterns and piecing together materials, which is kind of what I do now.
I started from a traumatic experience. It started from trauma and loss. Yeah, so it was, I don't know how much of the story you want, but yeah, it came from loss and trauma.
Performance art, I worked with the literary magazine in college, and before then I was always too shy, essentially, to perform or read my poetry or share my work in public forums. But that was the first time I actually read a piece, and when I began to really do performance art is when I began with my company, Genre Urban Arts, and I began to have open mics and wanted to add, another dimension and to my work.
It started when I was 15 or 16. I did a teen internship with the Milwaukee Art Museum, and I saw the show 30 Americans. And this show is a show with 30 contemporary Black artists. And before, when I went to museums, I just didn't feel like I can connect. Like, I just didn't feel like it was a space totally welcoming for me. But when I saw that show and I saw Black people making art, questioning, examining, pursuing, and society, critiquing society, but also relating to my history as a Black person from Milwaukee, I then saw that, oh, I can do art, so Kara Walker, David Hammonds, who else? Glenn Ligon. Just a lot of just amazing contemporary Black artists who kind of really pushed the envelope on like identity and voice. And from there, I just wrote down all their names and I did research, and then I just started making my own artwork. They really inspired me to just find my own voice and also connect to my identity as a person in different ways.
When I was in grade school, I made a three-dimensional, three-story dollhouse out of cardboard. So I find it, here I am later in my age, I'm back where I started. It's like it's a full circle because I made the dollhouse out of cardboard and fabric scraps that my mom had, because she was a seamstress, and carpet and just things that I found, random things that I found. And that's when I found out when I was a kid. I'll tell you, years ago, there used to be a TV guide. Do you remember that? You know the TV guide? Mm-hmm. It had this little contest in there that you could draw. You had three things you would draw. You drew a chicken, I think it was, a house, and a farm or something like that. And I sent that in, and that's when I started liking art. And they told me, they sent it back to me, and they told me that I was really good. So I was like, okay, well, let me start doing something with that. That's when I was a kid.
Well, again, I never really had a passion for art, but I had a passion to know my true identity, to really who I am and how God sees me. So I read Psalms 139, the whole chapter. Verses 23 and 24 is what I really focus in on. And that said, search me, deity, and know my painful ways, and put me on a straight path. So it was through the art that this came about, literally show me. And so at one point, God inspired me to go get magic markers and a sketch pad. And I never will forget, because it was actually like $24. And that was a lot of money for me at that time. But anyway, I did so, and then I started drawing. And as I drew, it was things where really they weren't beauty. It was most of it was sexual. And I was ashamed of this, man. And I said, why are you giving me all of this, this stuff? And it was like, this is what's in you that's holding you captive. And it was because I was sexually abused. And so that's how I got started. God shows me what's my painful way. And after a dark period, that's when I started to get the beauty came out. So I put away the old and picked up on the new and the beautiful.
I don't know that I discovered it. I think it's just always kind of been there. And only recently did I realize that it could be something that I do as a job.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't think I have a passion. I just like doing it. I don't know if it's a passion. I always knew how to do it since I was a child, but I'm not going to say that I have this passion for making art. I have passion for my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, my family. Do I have a passion for art? No.
My passion came in a different way than most people. I worked for child welfare. I was a licensing of foster parents, and I happened to walk into a house when a drive-by shooting happened at the house I walked into. So it was a lot of trauma going on, and it was during the time when I was going to grandma for a first time too. So with the trauma from being shot at, I started using my art.
I make art for me. I make artwork for absolutely myself and the peers I'm making that are in my paintings. When I'm constructing a piece, I have a lot of communication with my models and the people because I feel as though I'm responsible for portraying somebody else, and that inherits an amount of respect that you have to have for somebody else, and also making sure that they're being portrayed in a way that represents them. So I'm making artwork for that type of us that is relative to the people I've kind of grown up with, because I also feel like I've come, because I've had so much support from my family, like I also feel like I want to make artwork that is relatable and like authentic to our situation.
I make art for myself because it's a dialogue that I have between whatever I'm working on, a theme or the object. So I'm having this constant back and forth with myself, but then when it's done, the art becomes a dialogue for the viewer to dialogue with me and my art and themselves. And so I start out making it for myself, but then other people are brought into it after it's finished.
Honestly, I make art, just to give the main gist of it, is really for my Black women. Probably cliche, but not because I'm a Black woman, but it's okay because I gotta let them know that we are the future. and if it's me trying to highlight them and let them know that they're queens and they're beautiful, so be it, because that's gonna be me. I love finding different ways, whether it's abstract, through my architectural like ideas. I still want to find a way to highlight my Black women as queens, whether it's them with their designated throne.
I think my art looks like the audience that I identify with, so mainly Black women. The best compliments I ever receive are when people say that they see themselves in my work. So they'll see a doll and they say, like, that's my tummy and that's how my hair looks and that's my body. So it means a lot to me to have people feel represented and see themselves in my media.
I make art for Black girls.
My art is a document of my journey in life. And so that means that I'm making my art to document my journey. So it's for me and it's for legacy. And it's for anyone who is able to embrace it.
My practice is for Black people, and a lot of my writing is in particular for Black women, definitely.
I make art for myself, but I hope it engages. I also make it to connect to other people. Like, I think it's a remnant of myself, but I think it's kind of just not so, you can't necessarily tell it's myself, that it can be universal. I really appreciate, and I want to dive in that more, like that space where it can connect to other people. And I like that it's like a vague interpretation, how the person can get the artwork, because it allows that moment where I'm making the artwork for me, but also the viewer can have that connection to it too. So I'm hoping that through the size of the work or the spacing or just the simplicity of the shapes, that the viewer can also connect to it in a kind of way, because it's not necessarily overtly an image of me or of image of a person, but more so abstraction of shapes and just kind of universal movements I think anyone can relate to.
That's a good question, because we ask our students, like, who are you, who is your audience? And that was always a troubling question for me. And so I think it's a kind of a therapeutic thing, like to make art, to work out the things that I am discovering about my identity or about my family's identity, coming from South Carolina, you know, connecting Africa. When I was in film school and I would see filmmakers who were already out in the world, who were African American women or men, and their images were reflecting that they had been to these places, I was so envious. You know, it's like I always wanted to go to Africa. And the first chance I got to go there, it was so inspiring because everything looked different. Color was saturated, you know, like everything was alive in that space for me. So it became, you know, kind of my way of working my way into telling my stories, telling stories for myself, but also to be a part of storytelling that was reflecting identity and, you know, collectively who we are.
I make it for myself and hope that someone will claim it for themselves.
Strongly. Black women self-sovereignty, I address in my work for myself and me as a Black woman, a Black American woman, and also as a Black American woman in the Black American and African diaspora. I also can be a representative of Black womanhood. And in my little girls, in my artwork, I'm also celebrating Black girlhood. So yes, that's a strong force in my work, celebrating Black women.
My work is about empowerment of Black women, and actually the women in my work are really based on people like Bell Hooks, Sojourner Truth, even Whoopi Goldberg, Fannie Mae Hammer, and other women that I grew up with, like my aunt Doretha, my godmother, Aunt Frances, Mrs. Turner from the church, because I always saw Black women doing things. And I think that kind of helped me get through my childhood. And later on, when I learned about, people like Bell Hooks and Toni Morrison and stuff. So that's really influences me. And I think of those type of women that are not afraid to be who they are. Those are the type of women in my work, and women who don't take no mess.
It definitely resonates a lot with my work. Black women are very caring and very loud, and we speak out against injustices for any marginalized group. So women, our own community, and communities outside of us. A lot of times I feel like Black women don't get that kind of support reciprocated when we need it. So in my art, I want to show up for Black women in that way. So I want us to feel like, yes, we're strong Black women, and it's that cliche, but also when you look at my art, I want you to know that you can be, like, we're soft and we're caring and we have joy, we're funny, and we have space to be able to do all of that, to be all of that at one time.
It deeply resonates with the lack of seeing not just Black art, but Black art created by Black women, of Black girls, and not seeing ourselves represented. You know, I'll go to art shows and I'll see Black art and I can look at it and I can tell that a Black person did not create it. And so even to put us in a space that isn't done by us, for us, and represents us, that's what really, that speaks to me.
Everything that I do, and including making art, is I have to attribute it to those who came before me, my ancestors, my foremothers, and my forefathers, the people who really chose to live in a very difficult time so that I could have the opportunity to create and be where I am today. And so everything is attributed to them. In my own personal practice, it is about the Black experience. And I am right now working on allowing my creativity to relish in the happiness of being Black. There's a lot of focus for Black artists in particular to really reveal the pain and the hurt that we experience. But I want to make opportunities through my work and through events and things that I do for Black artists and brown artists to also show the joy and the happy side that we do have and we are allowed to relish in.
Like I said before, it was very hurtful when my mother passed in 2004, and I was working at an organization where I was the only Black, that whether it be female or male, I was only Black. And during that time, I experienced, I didn't know it at the time because I didn't know that I was being I didn't know that I was being harmed that way. I didn't know that racism was being perpetrated upon me. And during that time, I made art, bas relief pieces. And one of the pieces was called Looker. And I made that piece because I got written up for looking at somebody. I was told that my eyes hurt them. I'm like, what? Really? So yeah, I can see how this relates to my artwork and that you pointed out. I never really thought about it like that, but those are the things that was on my mind when I was making those pieces. Looker, Headhunter. I made another piece was called Popeye, because they told me my eyes bucked out of my head when I got mad, and I was like, "What? Are you serious?" So yeah, I can see where my art then and now reflects upon Bell Hooks and Sojourner Truth's mission.
Actually, it does not, and it stems back to when I was a child. When I was about 7 or 8, I lived on a plantation, and the plantation owner would drop his little boy off to play with me. And then he caught us playing house, mommy, daddy, and he never came back anymore. So I asked my grandmother, I said, why doesn't Jerry come to play with me anymore? And she said, because he's white and you colored. And I said, what color? And she said, you're Black and he's white. So I looked at my skin and I looked at his, and I said to myself, my grandmother, she doesn't know her color, she's dumb. And so from that time until, race didn't really play a part in it until I came to Milwaukee. And that's when I really found out that I was different, and there was things I couldn't have or do because I'm Black.
Most of the artwork I do is of Black women in particular and specifically, mostly because I don't feel like I see enough representation. I don't feel like I see us. And then the things I do see of us are not usually done by us. And the images are violent. Like they're violent in like a hypersexualization. They're violent in the stripping away of humanity. And for me, most of my imagery that focuses on Black women is about Black women in magical moments of peace, of rest, of great emotion, and emotions beyond what is put on us, like the angry Black woman trope. So I kind of want to show other Black women what I see when I see us.
I think it resonates with me when it comes to the research that I do on like before the making. I feel that because I am in a very, like, not weird spot, but I'm just in a spot that's different, like within the intersections of Blackness, being a non-binary person. I feel that a lot of the times that I do identify as a Black femme, and a lot of my ideas are looked over or that I am not cared for. However, there also hasn't been room for me to break out of that femininity, like not be seen because of just how I look and what society imposes on me.
It does resonate, and it has resonated since I kind of began my art practice and found my voice to what I was going to use, whether I used another media, another way of expressing, but it definitely does, because for me, the biggest thing is that there has been an underrepresentation of people of color, specifically Black people as well as brown people, and then even particularly people who have different views and values, and women and others, other genders and things like that. So my work definitely speaks to that. I know from personal experience, I've had that also happen in my life, and so my art is expression of that. But just in my work too as a therapist, it comes through so much in the fact that even in the medical field, when we talk about a person's health, physical as well as mental, there's still a huge stigma and a huge gap between what happens to a woman of color when it's time for her to be treated as opposed to white women. And I have a long story about that, but I know we don't have time. But I'm just going to share that when I did a group story with women who were Black women who were overcoming cancer survival, and how they talked about how they were breast cancer survivor and how they were treated so differently. And we made stories about how their experiences was. So yes, ma'am, my work definitely speaks to that. Yes, indeed. How much time you got? But I'll basically say this: one of my last corporate jobs had to do with that very thing. I really embrace my ethnicity, and that comes through in my clothing, my ethnic clothing and things like that, my braids when I was using dreads at the time. So some of the people on my job had something to say, and my manager particularly had something to say about one of my kufis I had on my head. And she said, "Oh, you got that too far down on your head." Anyway, long story short, that was just one way, but then that was used as a way of labeling. And I became this oddity or whatever. Instead of just seeing me in my natural abilities for the job itself, you just kind of labeled me, this kind of a thing. And looking at, oh, do you take your hair out like that every night? Things like that. So yeah, I have had my share of those, definitely.
Definitely, like my early jobs working in retail and working in banking. Working in retail, I had to kind of be very loud and voice my opinion and voice that, hey, I can do this, because I worked with guys, and that kind of job, guys would always get like the better departments and that kind of stuff. So it had to really be like, hey, I can do that. So, and also with retail banking, trying to get out of like working in a branch and trying to advance my career in banking, if you didn't know certain people, you didn't really go far. So I had to actually just leave that company in order to keep moving in my career.
Yeah, I mean, it happens like when it's happening, I don't really notice it right away, maybe because I'm so used to it, which is not a good thing. But I've definitely had moments where I've had to kind of think like, okay, like this person is a white savior. They think that by pitying me or like enjoying my work, that they can help me, which that's not, pitying is not help. So I've definitely been in situations where I'm not being taken seriously or just valued in the way that I thought that they would value me by like white counterparts specifically. It's unfortunate, and it's something that I know I have to deal with for the rest of my career. I think the older I get, the better I get at like holding people accountable or walking away, knowing that my future is bright and I'll have a lot more opportunities that will be beneficial to me, where people will respect me as an artist and not just see me as a meal ticket. So that's been very helpful.
I mean, just growing up in Wisconsin as a Black woman, as a Black female, I experienced discrimination all the time. I think the first time that I ever was really conscious about race was in 3rd grade, when the teacher had just done a lesson on slavery and how Abraham Lincoln was the great white hope and saved us. And at recess, a white girl walked up to me and said, "You should be grateful to us." I'm like, "For what?" "You should be grateful to us because we freed you from slavery." I think that was the first time I realized that I was Black and different, and first time I ever felt less than.
Yes. And I think at the time, my lack of legal and mental and emotional tools, my response was not responding at all, because I didn't know how. I think that if those things occurred in my life today, I would respond by asking questions and not feeling like I'm silenced. And on a personal note, when those things occurred, I just wrote about it, but I never actually did anything about it. So it made me feel belittled and not valued. So part of me creating art is trying to highlight individuals who might feel that way too, but know that it's all right to use your voice, because your voice might not always be verbal. Maybe your voice is things that you create.
Many instances in my professional career, and also with my work with my company, with genre. When I began, we started as a publishing company, developing our anthologies. And I remember a lot of the people I was introducing my anthologies to, like, why are you doing this? Why is this important? And then I was really not included in the art scene. And it really definitely felt like it was because I was a Black woman. There was this, I felt like there was this attitude of like, who are you? Who do you think you are to create? Who do you think you are to own a publishing company? Who do you think you are to decide, to curate a book? Like, who are you even? And so that definitely was a time where I definitely felt discriminated against. And the interesting thing is that I did have like 1 or 2 supporters, Woodland Pattern Bookstore and other places in Milwaukee, but I went out of Milwaukee and held events in New York, and began to look more in an international realm to find people to support genre. And when that happened, then when I came back home, more people here, the businesses here, were more interested in me.
There's been many times where I felt, and I have amazing friends who are Black women, and it's just kind of like a universal thing that, no matter what space we navigate through, like, we're always going to have to do some type of labor intensive or there's these certain expectations or standards for us. So yeah, it's hard, you know, how to deal with microaggressions, how to deal with, you know, being Black in more, you know, not elite spaces, but more, you know, spaces where we're not the majority. It's things that I'm learning, and it's just different. And, you know, that saying that, you know, they always say, like, you have to work twice as hard. And it's true, you know, we have to do the double work so we won't be the stereotype that they want to believe we are, but which we aren't. So, but also too, you want to represent your culture and your heritage. So yeah, it's very challenging. And I guess I'm in the process where I'm really learning how to navigate through my body and through being a Black woman, and also being in a racist world, and how does that look like?
I think I'm still responding to that because being in academia, it was the first thing I met. You know, I still am the only African American woman teaching film at UW Milwaukee. You know, and I say that with meaning that I'm tenured, that I had to earn that, but it was like going through hell, you know, to earn that because I didn't have mentors around me. And now there is probably one person, I've never met her, who's an adjunct, living somewhere else, not being here in Milwaukee. I know she exists. I've responded to her. She's much younger than me, but we don't have any kind of relationship. So I still feel like I stand on the shoulders of other women who came into academia doing what I'm doing and still had to be the only one, and to fight, you know, a very white, cis environment, you know. So I'm always fighting it. I'm always questioning, you know, why something is a certain way. Students come to me with complaints. I can look at the demographics. I can see who reflects me and who does not, or who knows that I'm there and who does not. You know, somebody can go through a whole curriculum and never have taken a class with me and, you know, have been Black and female. So I think it's an everyday battle in the arts and in academia.
Yes, I worked for an organization for 15 years, and I was the only Black female there. I was the only Black, period. And during my time there, I loved the job because of the mission of the job, the mission behind the organization. But as time went on, I realized that I wasn't getting a fair shake, because every time a promotion or possibility of being sent to the next area, I was denied. But I was doing a lot of things, and so I had to really, it was difficult at one time because every time I went and said something, it was, oh, you're mistaken, you're mistaken. And so I handled it well. I decided prayerfully that I would leave on my own accord, because at one point I felt like they were trying to force me out. And I didn't want those 15 years to go to waste, because I did a lot there. And I think I was a great contribution to the organization. So I left. I left on my own accord, and that was probably 6 years ago.
Absolutely have been discriminated. Like, where do I start? Like, when hasn't that been a part of the discrimination? Like, that's part of the experience of Black womanhood, is to know that it's happening, and you get to choose between, like, making the move and losing your job or your opportunity, or you take it. I get fired a lot, so.
I think it happens a lot of the time. I think it happens as similar as, like, telling someone my pronouns and them not getting it right, or actually deliberately being transphobic to me on purpose. And it doesn't feel good, but in a professional setting, what I try to do is just present that it's making me uncomfortable and that it needs to be addressed. And then once it's addressed, hopefully like it doesn't happen again or we can work through that. But if it continuously happens, then I just take that as a form of disrespect, and that that person is not trying to see me for me. They only want to see what they want to see. And I'm not interested in working with someone who's living in a fantasy who only wants to see what they want to see.
Oh, it was when I was at MyEd, I was a senior, and there were in the theater district down on Water Street, they had just built all that, you know, around the Pabst Theater. And this bank was in there, and so they asked students to provide work on loan for their walls. They had all bare walls. And so I submitted 5 pieces, and they wanted to buy all 5, but they bought 4 because one was already promised to somebody. And they paid 4 figures for my work, and I was like ecstatic. I never thought that that would happen.
Well, I can honestly say that every single moment of art in my life led to this very moment right now. So I can honestly say this moment is like the best experience through all the people and all the experiences that I, went through and met. It's just like I'm very grateful to be in this very experience right now. And like I can cry.
I would say a few years ago, I got a chance to work with Pearls for Teen Girls. I did some art to kind of celebrate that group. They work with pre-college age girls that are in need of some kind of support, maybe getting off their feet or kind of transitioning from high school to college. And I got a chance to make paper dolls for each individual staff member. And it was really rewarding to be able to kind of celebrate them and what they do through my art.
Wow, I think one of my best art experiences was working on the murals on State Street. I put together a team of Black women artists from like 9 years old on up, and just working in that sense of community within our own team, but as the bigger part of this large community of artists that were up until that point, many of them undiscovered. It was an amazing experience. It was like 2 weeks we were down on State Street, and to this day I think back to it with the fondness of memories, is having that feeling of camaraderie.
When I was in a deep depression, this is after I had left America and I was living here, I was deep in the abyss, very emotionally broken. And a drawing that I did, because I continued to create. And so a drawing that I did was embraced in an art prize. And that was at the time that happened, it was so unexpected and just so unbelievable. So yeah, it was that drawing that I created when I was in the abyss.
I think one of my most rewarding art experiences was the first time that I would have been accepted into the Triennial, which was probably somewhere mid-90s, and it was work that I was doing focused on Senegal. It was a work that I had made called Don't Hurry Back. And I also got to celebrate that work here in Milwaukee, and to have an opening and have it be, invite an audience and people from the other artists from the community to help celebrate that work. And also going abroad and showing work, with other filmmakers who were coming out of Black collectives in England, being at an international film festival with them in Ouagadougou and also in Germany.
One of the best experiences I've had with my work was surprising somebody with a portrait of themselves and like presenting that image to her in a place where she didn't expect it. It was at a party, and it was like a really big party. And at the end I was just like, hey, can I show you this piece? And that was the Geneva piece. She didn't know it was coming. She had no idea. It was great. It was super great.
I think my most rewarding art experiences was the first time that I did 5 points. That was my most rewarding. It was the idea that I was set upon other artists who are some of the great artists there are, that I think there are.
I really love pink. I love all the variations of pink. Magenta isn't even a pink, but I love that pink is so many colors, and pink is just a variation of red, but it's like so distinctly its own color. And it's soft feeling to me, and all of the other kind of pastel color, it just makes me want to think about other pastel colors. I love pink.
Red, red, red. That's a favorite color of mine. The favorite color. But the reason is because of the energy. I'm a very energetic person, always have been. Highly motivated to achieve things, to get things done. Also a lover, and all of those colors of red just kind of speak to that energy, at the same time passion. So yeah, that's why.
French blue is my favorite color. Well, one of my favorite colors, because my colors are conditional for me. It depends on the situation, but French blue is the most placid, calming, peaceful color that, and that, I think that's kind of like my temperament.
Always has been red, I think. I'm just drawn to that. It's very bold. I would say in my personal work, I tend to go toward more bright pinks and greens. The vibrant colors just look really good with the skin tones that I tend to draw. So it really excites me, and I love seeing it. So I keep using them.
Okay, I don't really have a favorite color, but if I were to have a favorite color, it would be leopard print. And it's because to me, it just represents that sense of fierceness and femininity, and I love that.
Turmeric, like in my house, because it evokes rebirth. The root is actually really good for you, and it tastes good. It's connected to healing. It's just a beautiful color. I feel like it inspires me, so I painted my walls because it makes me feel good.
I love color. One of my favorite colors is a yellow-green color, chartreuse. It's one of my favorite colors, yeah. And I also love cerulean blue. And I love those colors is because when I wear them, and I love color, you won't see it in these works, but some of my other works and how I dress and all, they're so joyful and they give joy. And when I wear them, people come up to me and comment. And I know because color is does carry emotions. And those two colors, others too, but those are two of my favorites. They're just joyful.
Green. Green is my favorite color because it reminds me of renewal, refreshing. Like a lot of people say like green because of money. Everyone loves money, great, wonderful. But green is like the colors of spring and starting over. And I love a good ending and a new beginning.
It is gold, as you can see. I don't know, I love gold. I'm not sure. It's a rich color. I just think it's sparkly. It's just like, if I see gold anywhere, I'm just like, oh my gosh, like I get geeked up, like just so happy about it. It's a calming color. It's like the sun, but not so bright. It has like a more warm hue to it. I don't know, it's royalty, it's regal. At the same time, it's like nurturing and warm. It's just a color for me that like I just admire so much.
Blue. I love the color blue, and I think it just resonates with me because of the indigo, the connection to indigo, the connection to cultural heritage, and coming from a place where indigo was produced in South Carolina. And it just has so much mystery. It connects me in ways that's spiritual, you know, like blue bottles. I love blue bottles, and I love the idea of bottle trees, honoring ancestors. So, it's like, I feel it's my power color. Blue is my power color.
Purple is my favorite color. I was married in purple. That was my wedding dress. My wedding dress was purple. So I've always liked purple. I think it's just a royal color to me. And I've always liked purple. Purple.
If I close my eyes and touch one, it's orange. I guess the color, it stimulates me and makes me, now around me there's a lot of orange, but it just does something for me. I just like orange.
Black. I like black. Black is my favorite color. It mostly goes with everything. But also, what I like about black is not the absence of color, but that it goes above and beyond in presenting any other color. If you put black behind a color, that's all you see.
Purple is my favorite color. It has always been my favorite color because it means passion, and I'm a very passionate person.
I have so many favorite colors, but I will say my top two are red and yellow. And I would say red is my favorite color because it makes me feel powerful. It makes me feel protected. And yellow makes me feel really joyous and optimistic. And it's also really healing for me too.
I like to watch old classic B horror movies, and I watch them so much I just put them in the background because it's just comforting because I grew up on those things. So I either have that, or I'll have old time radio on and those old radio stories, or I'll have contemporary Christian music. And right now my most favorite artist is Tauren Wells, and the song What You're Famous For, it just slays me. I just love it. I was listening to that on the way to the studio.
I listen to a lot of music. I'm always listening to music in here. Usually, it's so many different genres. It's hard to kind of pinpoint things. I'll usually start a playlist and I'll get stuck in that one playlist for like a year, and I'll just keep adding to it and changing it. Some of the songs right now, there's Jumping Off the Moon by Mac Ayers. I really love that song right now. There's a song that I really like called Ford Cardinal by Halima that I play a lot. Besides like classic, like 70s, 80s, stuff like that, I listen to everything. Or if I'm not listening to music, I am catching up on a podcast that I'm probably like 20 episodes behind on.
For my personal space, you'd hear my record collection, because I have a nice record collection, I must say. Not to brag, but I do. And you would hear all sorts of things. It's a variety of music. The majority of my record collection came from my dad's album or collection, and I just combined it with mine. Right now I'm listening to a lot of Shaka Khan and Rufus, Bad Brains. You'd hear my cat, because sometimes she meows really loud, but thankfully she's super quiet right now. I don't even know where she is. But you hear her because it seemed like we both be singing along to the music. You'd hear my neighbors because they have 10 children. You'd hear my neighbors across the street. I I don't know if you want to edit this out, but it's a trap house. Just being real, you could edit that. But you'd hear traffic, ambulance, police, but in my personal space, just really good music.
I play all kinds of music. You may hear some Aretha. Some of the songs I sent in. Sarah Vaughan to some French singers. There's this group called The Apartments. They're an Australian group. I love their music. Some rap music. All kinds. I don't know. There's too many. I love music.
Man, I love hip hop. Like all hip hop, I'm with it. This week in particular, I've really been playing Damn, the album Damn, Kendrick Lamar's album. That's been on rotation all week. Tupac is always on rotation. Lauryn Hill, anything with bass, like I need that bass line, like that is a thing. So hip hop all day.
Sometimes I work to silence, and other times I work to very eclectic music. You know, there was a time when I was a DJ and I played jazz on air, but I also played reggae. So I'm really into classic reggae, women, reggae artists, but a lot of male crooners in reggae and jazz. So I like, jazz that I guess it could be anything, like Alice Coltrane. I love her work a lot. I love Nina Simone. I love stories in music too. There's an artist whose name is Jean Carn, and I love her collaborations with her husband earlier on when they were doing straight ahead jazz. So occasionally I'll play music like that, in the background.
When I do my work, I have this little voice in me. This is why I've been quoted in the past as saying, Rosemary works in dialogue with Jehovah. And actually, I am convinced that I do so because there's a little voice in me, like if I'm sewing or doing this, it's like, no, not that way. Yes, no. So mainly I listen to my inner voice, to my creative imagination from God, that when I'm creating.
I make playlists. I make a lot of playlists. And generally I try to put a playlist together based on how it makes me feel, not necessarily what's on it. So I like things with beats. I like things that make you travel in time. So lots of world music, free jazz, things from childhood. I listen to a lot of music.
I think I listen to not just music in the studio, but I'm always listening to, let's say, like a panel discussion, podcast. So I'd say one of my favorite podcasts is The Read. That's been my number one for the past 5 years. And as far as panel discussions, I really like Haymarket Books Publishing Company. They put on a lot of great panel discussions and they dole them out weekly, but I love listening to them. And music, I'm literally all over the place, but right now I'm really into Makhami. He's a rapper based on the East Coast, but he also is Haitian, so he implements a lot of his culture in his music.
If you were watching me work, there is a good likelihood I will be on YouTube listening to Kimberly Foster's For Harriet, probably on repeat. Also Fab Socialism by T Noir and Khadija Mambawi. I listen to a lot of YouTube. It's free. And you can just find a lot of people with just really awesome research essays, like people just doing work for you. And as someone who I think has a hard time reading, there's just not really an excuse to not absorb some types of information. especially when people are doing it by themselves, like they're just artists. They're just artists out there doing research, and also it can be very like scary, kind of making something that's like on the internet forever. But also people were very vulnerable with like kind of discussing just discourse, and that's I'm listening to a lot, and I also listen to a lot of silly stuff. Mary Kay Bella is like somewhere it's completely opposite. She does hair wig tutorial reviews called Slay or Throw Away, and that just is a lot of fun. And I just sometimes need something just to be goofy and like, oh, but also very helpful. Like I might want one of those later because I don't know information. It's really great that someone's just reviewing stuff and like just giving out just free information out there. It's crazy.
Well, I don't know if unique, but there's a lot of complexities. I'll just say this. Some people don't know that I have a black belt in Taekwondo, so I can take care of myself if I needed to, you know. So that may be one unique thing people don't know. I mean, I'm a therapist. I think some people know that. I am a family and marriage therapist as well as an art therapist, and I believe in that because I believe in art as being a tool for healing and how that can help in that. So maybe those couple things.
It's kind of corny, but my name is Joya for a reason, and I just like to kind of like spread that joy around. So I'm really grateful that my mother named me Joya. But that's it.
I spent a few years volunteering for organ and tissue donation awareness. I had a daughter who passed away when she was 6 weeks old, and she would have been 14 this year. She was an organ donor when she passed away. She was able to save another baby with a life-saving gift. So I spent a lot of time doing speaking engagements and events and spreading awareness about organ and tissue donation in the Black community.
I like to look good. Like I love shopping. A lot of the outfits that I draw in my artwork, you'll probably see me trying to emulate that in real life. I take fashion pretty seriously. I think the older I get, the more ostentatious it will get. You'll probably see me when I'm 50 with a giant hat, but I'm gonna be wearing that giant brim hat. Like I'll be like looking good. So I think, I don't know, and I feel like that's something that I really love doing. It's just I never really got that much joy and control over what I got to wear growing up. So now being an adult, I'm like all different colors, patterns, boots, tattoos, just like things like that help me establish who I am out in the world.
Well, I think it's not unique, unfortunately, but I am a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. And a lot of my art comes from that pain, but the desire within to turn that pain into something else, to use my scars and experiences to provide images in the world that help girls who have gone through that to see themselves in a beautiful way.
I can write backwards. I write backwards. So I can, and I can write with both hands, and I can write forward and backwards. And I do have a large artwork that it was written all backwards. And then the flip side you see. So that's one thing.
I love creating curriculum. Like I'm a nerd that way. Like some people are like, oh, I really love, traveling, which I enjoy. But like I really get excited to create and to facilitate things. And so like I'm a curriculum nerd.
I also have a degree in journalism too. So outside of this, I have done like video work, like short films, and I've done like a lot of photography too.
I'm really shy in front of cameras. And the other thing is that, my aesthetic, I've been saying this, like I'm trying to really build an aesthetic that really speaks to my identity. My mother's, upbringing was in South Carolina. And I really see and feel that there's an aesthetic there that I'm trying to, layer into my work. that might be understood visually, that also tells stories about place, memory, and dreams.
It's all out there. Let's put it. I've exposed myself to everything. I was a battered wife. I was sexually abused. And those are the things that I don't mind talking about them, but it doesn't matter anymore because I have forgiven those who harmed me. And I did this. I find out after I've forgiven them, then I am able to forgive myself. So there are no secrets, and I only share things maybe to help others, but it's possible to overcome it. But I would not have overcome my background as battered wife, sexual abuse, unless I had really turned my life over into God's hand.
I've had so many jobs. Actually, I've had so many jobs doing so many different things. And all of the things that I've learned over the course of my life kind of give me the tools that I use in my work. So farming, like political organizing, running shelters, all that stuff, like that stuff goes into my work. I don't know that the work would look the same without it.
Hi, my name is Anika Kowalik. Ain't I a intersectional Black person that deserves to be loved and cared for like the next?
My name is Ariana Vais. Ain't I a bookkeeper? Ain't I a record keeper?
I'm BB. Ain't I a uniquely fashioned and created by God creature who is worthy of the utmost of respect, dignity, sensitivity, integrity that can be given to any human being, the same as it should be for all. I don't see myself any better, but at the same time I see myself as important as. Ain't I a person who can be in my own skin who I am and not have to worry about trying to be something other than. We put on airs in the corporate world. Can I be who I am? Ain't I a person who is worthy to express my creativity in the way that I'd like to? Ain't I a unique individual organism fully capable of all of the things I mentioned as well as more in the body that I have and the spirit that I have?
My name is Crystal Denise Gillen. Ain't I a daughter, sister, a granddaughter, niece, an aunt? All of these things are who make up who I am, but the most astonishing thing for me is that as a woman, I bring to that life and light and energy. And I think that the world is trying to squelch that in women because it's such a power. And if you notice most things, when there's a couple involved, there's always, the eyes are always on the woman. She has such a power that she doesn't even realize just by her presence and her essence.
My name is Della Wells. Ain't I a woman?
My name is Joya G, and ain't I a natural talent?
My name is Kirsten Ghaznavi. Ain't I a stronger woman when I'm allowed to be more vulnerable?
My name is Linnea Sproles, and ain't I a bitch?
I am Laleda G, and ain't I an artist? It is what I ran from, and I deeply embrace it, and it's part of my greatest joy.
I am Martina Patterson. Ain't I a breath?
I am Maxine Banks. Ain't I a universe?
Hi, my name is Nikisha Roberts Washington, and ain't I a shape-shifting, boundless truth teller?
My name is Nia Wilson. Ain't I a person?
My name is Portia Cobb. Ain't I a woman?
Hi, my name is Rhonda Gatlin Hayes. Ain't I a Black woman?
My name is Rosemary Ollison. Ain't I a wonderfully made woman?
My name is Rosie Petrie, and ain't I a handful?
Hi, my name is Ruthie Joy. Ain't I a phenomenal woman who can create art?
Hi, my name is Sanji Yarbrough Hunt, and ain't I in agreement with Sojourner Truth's statement?
And ain't I a woman?
My doorbell this morning, gone over the way to go. My bell rang this morning, didn't know which way to go. I had the blues so bad, I sit right down on my floor. I feel like going on the mountain, jumping over in the sea. I feel like going on the mountain, jumping over in the sea.
My name is Sanji Yarbrough Hunt. I do want to make a statement, actually ask a question that really relates to this show and how I feel about everything in general is that, but specifically to the museum, what are you going to do after this show? What are you going to do after this show? Is this just it? And that's it.